Hey everyone, I hope you guys are having a great day, and if not, I wish you have a better one tomorrow. I'll be honest with you guys, I am a little bit excited for the start of next year. The start of next year, we're gonna have games like Callisto Protocol and Dead Space Remake. Man, when those games release, I'm gonna be psyched. And with this year almost ready to head for a close, I've just had a good idea for a video. So today, I wanted to talk about games that are very similar to the Callisto Protocol. Whether if it's horror, or being strategic, or just simply gunning down monstrous creatures, that's what I want to talk about today. And before I go any further into the subject, I would like you guys to please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps this channel, and it gets you more videos. But with that out of the way, let's do it. Now for this particular list, it's not a top 5 list. It's not about what game is better than this or that. I want to talk simply from the games that are the least like the Callisto Protocol to games that are the most like it. Where the aspects I focus on, from its atmosphere to its gameplay or its similar mechanics, whatever it is that I point out, that's the reason why it's here. But to start things off, I have to bring up the honorable mentions. When it comes to this series, Alan Wake, honestly, a lot of people can say that it's not a horror genre. Now, I can understand that Alan Wake doesn't have anything to offer that Callisto Protocol is. But there is one thing that I can say that makes Alan Wake very unique, and that is its concept of being this writer and using a flashlight to wound and weaken his enemies, and then using firearms to put them down. And not only that, but the factor that this guy only carries a small amount of ammo to be able to subdue certain enemies. So you're not running around like Doom Guy with a whole backpack full of ammunition, but rather you're an ordinary man who's carrying a small amount of ammunition and putting these guys down. This series only has 2 games, where you have Alan Wake, and if you're an Xbox or a PC player, you can probably play Alan Wake American Nightmare, which is a 9-level game, but at the very most, you're playing 3 levels over and over again. And on top of that, it has a survival mode, which is very fun. I recommend this game. It's good. It's not a bad game at all. Next up in this honorable mentions, we have BioShock. Now, the only reason I put BioShock in this list at all is because of its atmosphere. The atmosphere for BioShock is really eerie, and I swear to you, when I was little and playing this game, I was scared. I was so scared I played the game with no volume. But nowadays, it's a very interesting marvel to be had. Going down to Rapture and using plasmids as such to take down enemies like splicers or big daddies. Man, that is a fun time, I tell you what. It's very similar to games like Dead Space and most definitely Callisto in terms of going through this eerie atmosphere of stations and various locations to look, loot, shoot, and try to strive forward in this terrifying wake. In particular, I'm only referring to BioShocks 1 and 2, where BioShock Infinite is a great entry. By no means am I saying anything bad about it. It's just that it wouldn't work in this scenario, where I'm only talking about its aesthetic, its atmosphere. So next up we have the Metro series. Now, Metro could most definitely fit the bill, even though you're not rummaging through your backpack and trying to manage your space. But there are 2 gameplay elements that does give that same feel: conservation and approach. When it comes to these 2 things in this game series, you have to be careful on how you approach specific areas or levels, where enemies are not just going to let you slide off and shoot them in the face, and even if you do, you only have a certain amount of ammunition, and it's tough trying to find ammunition off of dead bodies. Even though you can kind of purchase your ammo at stores and stuff, money in this game and in its world, it's tough to come by. So you really have to be restrictive on how you approach certain missions. The last game for the honorable mentions is Doom 3. Pretty much it's the same reason like BioShock. It's mainly for its atmosphere. But unlike BioShock, the game's enemies are kind of scary. And I say that now because, yes, I was scared of these guys. You know, it's very intense going into a room and then you just see these guys pop out of nowhere and you have to shoot the living daylights out of them just to progress. And I must say, I like Doom. Now, it's not like its latest entries, but I picked Doom 3 out of the bunch, being that it is eerie and scary, and as well as the enemy types kind of fit the bill in similarity to games like Callisto. Now we can finally begin the actual big hitters here, and here we go. For the first one of these games, you have Zombie, a game made by Ubisoft that takes place in the UK where an unknown plague has been unleashed onto the streets. In this game, you play as various survivors who come into contact with this weird individual who is trying to guide them on how to survive in this harsh reality. This game has a lot to offer, from its backpack systems to proper conservation of ammunition, where you have to use weapons like your melee in order to keep enemies at bay. Now yes, the graphics is pretty lackluster, and as well as the story is pretty bland, but outside of that, the game's atmosphere is a bit terrifying to be specific, and to top it off, the game has a higher difficulty than normal mode, where this other mode makes the game a little bit more harsher and a lot tougher for you to play. But otherwise, this is a solid entry and I recommend those who are seasoned veterans. The next one is a big one, and this big one has to come, and that is Dead Space. The whole series as a whole is a marvel, but if I have to be specific on the ones I have to talk about, it's between Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2. Now, of course, being that I did say earlier that the remake is coming right after Callisto, I would say to play Dead Space 2. Now, Dead Space 2 is a little bit actiony than that of Dead Space 1, but it's a great entry nonetheless. You know, you spend your time being Isaac Clarke again and uncovering more of this story, this history that the character in the original game was silent and never really spoken about. But thankfully in the remake of the first Dead Space, we're gonna have our voice actor speaking for Isaac, and for the first time giving this character more life and, you know, making him feel more relatable and having a bit of a personality. Next, we have The Last of Us. And I don't have to be specific about this one, because let's be honest, not a lot of people are going to play The Last of Us 2 only because the narrative part of the game is very weak. So moving on, the game's predecessor, The Last of Us, it's good for multiple reasons because of its story and its characters, but mainly I'm here to tell you about its survival mechanics. In this world, the apocalypse is still happening, but at the very least it's bearable to live in, being that you have somewhat of a society to live through. But as you progress through the game, you're playing as this man named Joel, who lost his daughter early on in the beginning of the outbreak, to a circumstance that you wish you would never lose any of your family to. Where in this game, you don't fight over backpack space, but you do have to be careful of your ammo, because your ammo count can be your undoing in any part of the game. So proper conservation and strategic methods is required to progress through the game. I haven't beaten this game, which I admitted, I haven't beaten the game, but it's a marvel to be had, and I recommend anyone to play this game. You don't necessarily have to own a PS5 to play The Last of Us. You can have a PS4 or a PS3 to play the game. Now, second to the last games on the list, you have The Evil Within. Now, this series right here, if you were to tell me this game is Resident Evil, I would probably look at you and be like, what do you mean? But when I played The Evil Within, the game is very similar to that of Resident Evil. You spend your time playing as this policeman, this investigator, this detective named Sebastian. And as you play as this guy, you're sitting there in the marvel of this mystery, wondering what the hell is going on. You pick up a wide range of weapons, and it's very important to upgrade your character so this way you can be able to be effective on the field. Because wherever these guys are that you're fighting, which I don't know them by name, let's just call them demons. These demons here aren't to be trifled with. Even when you think they're dead, it's best to burn them. Even though it's very similar to games like Resident Evil, it's a whole nother thing to just play it. The last, but not least at all, Resident Evil. This entire series is important. Not just because it's one of the most iconic zombie series to ever exist, but simply, this game is a pioneer to games like Dead Space, the Callisto Protocol, or basically any zombie game in this list, where it's a very big pioneer, where it focuses on a good aspect of survival horror, where you're spending your time trying to make sure that your inventory is all in check, making sure that you're able to go through the next level without dying or wasting most of your items, your precious items. But pretty much you can pick almost any Resident Evil from the list and you'll be fine. From the greatest and ambitious likelihood of the first Resident Evil to that of the remakes such as Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, or the latest installments that are still hitting hard like Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8. No matter which Resident Evil game you choose, it's not a bad time. It's a fun series. And as well, it can probably hold you over for a very long time when it comes to waiting for games like Callisto or Dead Space Remake to come out. I want to thank you guys for listening to me ramble on and on about zombie survival horror games. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And like I said earlier, like, comment, subscribe if you like more of this content. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.